Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. I hope you're ready. Sit down, get relaxed. Smoothie. Anyways, what we're going to be talking about today is what's going on over in the Ukraine. And, Putin's, what he's doing. It's quite terrible if you ask me. He destroyed almost a third of the Ukraine power stations in the past week, and it's quite disgusting if you ask me. And this is as Moscow rained more missiles down on infrastructure in what Kyiv and the West call campaign to intimidate the civilians of the Ukraine. Now, missiles have struck power stations in the capital of Kyiv, where they killed 3 people. And I know I'm not going to say this correctly, so I'll just spell it out. Kharkiv in the east. And then there's another city called Dnipro. And then you have Kryvyi, I think it's called, Kryvyi, and then RIH, which is in the south. And then you have, oh Lord, ZHYTOMYR, which is in the west, causing blackouts and knocking out water supplies as well. So they're really having a rough time there. And, it's no way to live. It's really not. One man perished in his flat or apartment, as we would call it, that was destroyed by Molotov cocktails. It's like, and that happened in the South. And it's just, in a war-torn country, and there's, you would want to try and escape, and it's like, it's almost, you feel like, it's not even worth trying to, because you just know there's no way out, Now, Russia has openly acknowledged targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure with waves of missiles and drone strikes since the start of last week, in what Putin said was legitimate retaliation for a blast on a bridge. So, I know there was a video going around of that bridge being blown up. And you saw that on one side of the screen, and on the other side, because it happened on Putin's birthday. And on the other side of the screen, it was Marilyn Monroe singing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President." Remember when she sang that to JFK? Okay, that's the video that I'm talking about. So, in Kiev and the West say intentionally attacking civilian infrastructure is a war crime. Yes, it actually is. And the attacks aimed at leaving Ukrainians with no heat, no power as winter arrives. Okay, they're going to be having a dark winter just like the UK is. Okay, it's Putin's latest tactics to escalate a war his forces are losing, all right? In a rare acknowledgement of the difficulties Russian forces are facing, their new commander described the military situation in Ukraine as tense, especially around the occupied southern city of Kherson, and that's Kherson. And the Russian installed chief of the Kherson region said some civilians from 4 different towns would be evacuated, citing what he said was the risk of an attack by Kyiv's forces. So in Mykolaiv, and that's Mykolaiv, which is in southern Ukraine, there was 3 explosions that were heard in the early hours on Tuesday. A missile completely destroyed one wing of a building in the downtown area, leaving a massive crater. A fire crew was seen pulling a body of a man from the rubble. Yeah. Now, the Russians probably get pleasure from this, and that was said by the owner of a nearby flower shop. It's just terrible that that's where your mind goes, you know, and that's how, but I would think that any victim or any survivor of such an attack would actually think that way. And I think, you know, I would probably think that way as well, you know, because that's just where your mind would go, you know. But then again, when you're in such a state, you don't think clearly, you know. But then again, you're not in the mind of the person who is attacking you, you know, so you don't know what they're actually thinking, you know. And Zelensky, he said that Russia was continuing to try to terrorize and kill Ukrainian civilians, and he reiterated his refusal to negotiate with Putin, who said, with Putin, who he says heads a terrorist state. Well, you know, I'm not one to judge, and I'm not going to say, yep, he sure is, or no, I'm going to side with him. No, I'm not siding with him. You know, Zelensky ruled out negotiations with Putin last month after the Russian leader announced the annexation of 4 Ukrainian provinces. And Putin, he's also called up hundreds of thousands of reservists and threatened to use nuclear weapons since mid-September, after his forces faced humiliating battlefield losses. There was no immediate word on how many people were killed in the strikes, but a day earlier, Russia sent swarms of drones to attack infrastructure in Kyiv and other cities, killing at least 5 people. So Moscow, they now deny deliberately targeting civilians, though it has pummeled Ukrainian villages, towns, and cities in what it initially called a special military operation to disarm its neighbor. And the Russian Defense Ministry repeated earlier statements that it was carrying out attacks using high-precision weapons on what it described as military targets and energy infrastructure across the Ukraine. And Ukraine accuses Russia of using Iran-made Shahed, and that's SHAHED 136 kamikaze drones, which fly to their target and then detonate. Yeah, that just the thought of something like that actually exists is scary. I don't care who you are, you know. And Iran denies supplying them, and on Tuesday the Kremlin also denied using them. However, there are 2 senior Iranian officials and 2 Iranian diplomats, and they had promised to provide Russia with more drones, as well as surface-to-surface missiles, which is a move to, infuriate the U.S. and its allies. And the U.S. State Department said that Washington would continue to take practical and aggressive steps to make the sale of drones and similar weapons harder, and also expressed concern about what is called the deepening alliance between Russia and Iran. Now, the Ukrainian foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, he said that he would ask Zelensky to formally cut diplomatic ties with Iran in protest over these drones. But NATO will deliver air defense systems to Ukraine in the next coming days to help the country defend itself against these drones. And the alliance's Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, that's what Stoltenberg said. But Moscow's new overall commander in Ukraine has been nicknamed General Armageddon. That's no joke. Yeah. in Russia by Russian media after serving in Syria, where his forces pounded cities to rubble, because that's something to be so proud of, in a brutal but effective scorched earth policy against its foes. Yeah. His appointment was quickly followed on October 10th by the biggest wave of missile strikes against Ukraine since the start of the war. And Putin, he cast those strikes as revenge for an explosion that damaged, like I was talking about the bridge, that damaged the bridge in Crimea and the peninsula that Moscow seized from the Ukraine in 2014. And Kyiv has not claimed a responsibility for that attack, but celebrated the destruction, like I said, with that video. And then British Armed Forces Minister, his name is James Heapney, Heappey. He said that this General Armageddon guy was pursuing a cruel and pointless strategy that he said would fail in its aim in trying to break the will of the Ukrainian people. If that is your goal, you need a hobby. I'm not kidding. You are soulless and you are cold-hearted. I mean, the Kremlin said that the 4 Ukrainian regions it claims to have annexed were under the protection of its nuclear arsenal. And the statement comes as both NATO and Russia prepare to hold annual military exercises to test the readiness of their nuclear weapons forces. And Russia's defense ministry said that 2 of its nuclear-capable Tu-95Ms strategic bombers had conducted a flight of more than 12 hours over the Pacific Ocean, the Bering Sea, and the Sea of Okhotsk. Not going to try to pronounce it, but Putin has previously said he is prepared to use nuclear weapons if necessary to defend Russia's territorial integrity. All right. If that's whatever. But he signed a law on Wednesday introducing martial law. Yeah. And he did this for 4 Ukrainian regions that the Kremlin claims to have annexed in violation of international law, along with a separate order imposing restrictions on movement in and out of 8 Russian regions adjoining the Ukraine. This man needs an enema. I mean, I'm serious. He's sick. There's something wrong with his head. The regions are the Kherson, Kherson, Zapor is, I'm not even going to try it, Zaporizhzhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. Russia does not control the entirety of those regions and is in a hasty retreat in Kherson, and Ukrainian forces regain territory there. But Ukraine's foreign ministry, they have condemned the decree as a new state of terror aimed to suppress the resistance of those regions' residents. It's disgusting what he's doing. He's declaring martial law in areas that, yeah, it's sad. So you've got General Armageddon that has this thing with just he needs a hobby. He likes to break the will of people. Then you have someone else who is just enacting martial law. And the Ukrainian people are literally living in a dark winter. And I feel bad. I'm sorry. I don't care what anyone has to say to me. I feel bad. No human should live like that. in constant horror and terror in the dark. No running water, no resources, no nothing. All right, guys, I'm out of here. I love you. I'll see you in the next one. You stay safe. You stay positive. You keep prepping. And as always, fear less. Ciao.